Semen retention sounds crazy to most modern men. Most of us have been trained to think that self-pleasure is normal. We're even getting taught that it's healthy for us. And, largely, again, like no one's really talking about chastity or abstinence or the benefits. In fact, it's the quite opposite. So when I started this channel around semen retention, it was like, this guy's crazy. I've been made fun of all around the world in mainstream media for, suggesting that men should regulate their ejaculations. I'm sure if you're on this channel, though, you are above all of that noise and you recognize the benefit. One thing that I'd like men who have never practiced semen retention or maybe never heard of the concept to understand is that semen retention is not a new concept. It's not something that is all of a sudden like, just an internet trend. While NoFap and semen retention has become, more talked about on the internet, this concept and this knowledge and this wisdom has been around forever. And in fact, I've studied the world religions, and it is actually a unifying factor among spiritual traditions around the world, which is really cool. Now, they didn't necessarily call it semen retention. Some called it chastity. There's a concept of like brahmachari. There's all kinds of different ways to allude to it. But the principle of abstinence, the principles of retaining is found in all spiritual traditions, both ancient and modern. And that includes the Taoist tradition. And I would have to say that I've learned tremendous amounts from the Taoist tradition. I would think that out of all the traditions, they have some of the most in-depth and, more importantly, practical knowledge and practices for men, especially men like myself, maybe like you who aren't monks. Maybe you're still engaged in intimacy, you're in a relationship, you want to have a relationship, you're not giving up S3X, but you understand the importance of retaining. They've got some of the best practices that I've learned to be able to transmute that energy and to hold on to your semen, and not just hold on to it and like what I call white knuckling it. I'm not gonna do it, and just like suffering through it, but actually to get the true spiritual benefits, the joy, the groundedness, the presence that comes with this practice. So in today's video, I want to read to you a little bit from a book called Cupid's Poisoned Arrow, which is, I haven't even finished the book, but I'm absolutely loving it. And it's a book, essentially, it's written by a woman, which is really cool to have a woman's perspective as well around Cupid's poisoned arrow, around how S3X, how lovemaking affects your chemistry and affects your psychology. Now, what's really interesting is she's not necessarily promoting any particular religion or spiritual practice. She's simply taking from, her husband's a scientist, so he's bringing like the neuroscience behind it, and she is saying, look at what these ancient traditions have also been saying, and look at how today's modern scientists are actually saying the exact same things. Of course, different language, and we have different instruments, and we can do funky things with the brain that potentially they could have, maybe not could have done, but they observed the truth in how lovemaking can either totally deplete your life and make you lower than an animal in consciousness and in health and in all kinds of problems, or how lovemaking can actually lift you up to God. Let's dive into it. Hi, my name is Nakula Das, and I help men master their S3X energy so you can become a powerhouse both in and outside the bedroom, and most importantly, unleash your God-given abilities. Go to the link in the description below and take the free transmutation guide so that you can do a deep dive into the process of transmutation. There's also a routine in there. I mentioned alchemy and the ability to transmute that energy and work with that energy. There's a routine in there that you can use right away so you can start to work with that energy in a conscious way. So I want to read this book, and I'm just going to give a few of my thoughts. This is, I'm not going to read the whole book, don't worry, but I do want to read this specific, she calls it, I can't remember exactly what she calls it, but big segments, wisdom segments, she says. So the book is largely based upon scientific facts, But then in between the chapters, she has these wisdom segments where she's going to pull on different traditions. So this one specifically on Taoism. Then she talks about Christianity, but not modern Christianity. I won't get into modern Christianity right now, but ultimately more like when Christianity first started, when it was still true to its esoteric nature and actual principles. Then she's going to pull on that. So let's talk about Daoism a little bit from this perspective. So she says, one of my favorite accounts of bonding-based lovemaking. So what she calls bonding-based lovemaking is like careza, which means to caress. It basically means making love without the purpose of orgasm, but making love to bond with your partner. We know at the highest level principle that lovemaking is for making a baby, but we know as human beings, we make love for pleasure, we make love for stress release, when people use love to lovemaking for power, all kinds of reasons that people are trying to self-pleasure. And now in the world of adult content, I mean, we've just gone into a whole different rabbit hole of pleasure seeking, which is having detrimental effects on men and society as a whole. So I just wanted to understand what she means by bonding-based lovemaking, which essentially means to make love without the purpose of making a baby, but actually the purpose of bonding with your lover. She says, one of my favorite accounts of bond-based lovemaking is contained in the Hua Hu Ching. Excuse me, somebody can correct my pronunciation there. A little known collection of teachings attributed, as much of Taoism wisdom is attributed to Master Lao Tzu. In the Walker translations, which includes material passed down orally, Lao Tzu warns, although most people spend their entire lives following the biological impulse, it is only a tiny portion of our beings. If we remain obsessed with seeds and eggs, we are married to the fertile reproductive valley of the mysterious mother, but not to her immeasurable heart and all-knowing mind. I love how he's talking about, like, basically he's saying, like, if your total life focus, which most people and men are, especially in this age, is all just about pleasure, it's just about the biological impulses, then you're missing a whole gamut, a whole spectrum and opportunity and possibility of what the human form of life has to offer. He says, and if you wish to unite with her heart and mind, you must integrate yin and yang within and refine their fire upward. Then you have the power to merge the whole being of the mysterious mother. That is what is known as true evolution. So he's saying that evolution isn't this biological process, while that's part of it. It's really a spiritual process of merging with what he calls the mysterious mother, in other words we can say with God. He explains further, the first integration of yin and yang is in the union of seed and egg within the womb. The second integration of yin and yang is in the sexual union of the mature male and female. Both of these are concerned with flesh and blood, and all that is conceived in this realm must one day disintegrate and pass away. So far, we are on familiar ground. But then Lao Tzu suggests that there is an entirely different experience open to us through union. It is only the third integration which gives birth to something immortal. The new life created by the final integration is self-aware yet without ego, capable of inhabiting a body yet not attached to it, and guided by wisdom rather than emotion. Whole and virtuous, it can never die. Lao Tzu advises that this mystical union of yin and yang can be achieved through sexual intercourse. Because higher and higher unions of yin and yang are necessary for the conception of higher life, some students may be instructed in the art of dual cultivation, in which yin and yang are directly integrated in the Tai Chi disciplined practice of sexual intercourse, or what I call sexual alchemy. This is what I teach my students. If genuine virtue and true mastery come together, the practice can bring about a profound balance of the student's gross and subtle energies. Otherwise, it can have a destructive effect. Indeed. Now, this is going back to the author. The result of this is improved health, harmonized emotions, the cessation of cravings and impulses, and, at the highest level, the transcendent integration of the entire energy body. And she says, my husband and I have already experienced some of the benefits mentioned as a result of making love frequently and affectionately, without pursuing the overstimulation of sexual satiation. We have noticed definite improvements in our health, greater emotional balance and harmony, and decreased cravings. Here are two other sections from the Hua Hu Ching offering additional pointers. Section 69. A person's approach to sexuality is a sign of his level of evolution. Unevolved persons practice ordinary sexual intercourse. Placing all emphasis upon the sexual organs, they neglect the body's other organs and systems. Whatever physical energy is accumulated is summarily discharged, and the subtle energies are similarly dissipated and disordered. It is a great leap backwards. For those who aspire to the higher realms of living, there is an angelic dual cultivation. Because every portion of the body, mind, and spirit yearns for the integration of yin and yang, angelic intercourse is led by the spirit rather than the sexual organs. When ordinary intercourse is effortful, angelic cultivation is calm, relaxed, quiet, and natural. Where ordinary intercourse unites sex organs with sex organs, angelic cultivation unites spirit with spirit, mind with mind, and every cell of one body with every cell of the other body, culminating not in dissolution but in integration, not in separation but in merging. It is an opportunity for a man and woman to mutually transform and uplift each other into the realm of bliss and wholeness. The cords of passion and desire weave a binding net around you. The trap of duality is tenacious. Bound, rigid, and trapped, you cannot experience liberation. Through dual cultivation, it is possible to unravel the net. You know, it's interesting, they talk about liberation. I learned something about the word addiction. Addiction, its root comes from slavery, meaning someone who's addicted is a slave. Yeah, it was really interesting. I was watching some other, videos around this subject, specifically around addiction, and they specifically talked about the definition of addiction or its root being slavery. And anybody who's ever had an addiction or a vice knows that you're a slave to it, whether you're a slave to food, whether you're a slave to sex, whether you're a slave to scrolling on social media, whether you're a slave to having to know more. Knowledge can be an addiction. Anywhere that you feel addicted, you're actually no longer free. Your soul is not liberated. And the human form of life, all traditions agree, is to reach liberation or salvation. Now, I personally don't believe salvation is just about accepting some deity or accepting some savior, but rather seeing the principles and weaved into the knowledge of these traditions. This is, I believe, what Lao Tzu is pointing to right now. Through dual cultivation, it is possible to unravel the net, soften the rigidity, dismantle the trap, dissolving your yin energy into the source of universal life. Attracting the yang energy from that same source, you leave behind individuality and your life becomes pure nature. Free of ego, living naturally, working virtuously, you become filled with exhaustible vitality and are liberated forever from the cycle of birth and death. Understand this, if nothing else, spiritual freedom and oneness with the Tao are not randomly bestowed gifts, but the rewards of conscious self-transformation and self-evolution. Anyways, she goes on, and of course there's tons of wisdom here. If you don't know the book, Cupid's Poison Arrow, check it out. It's got a ton of great information, and it really is an enlightening aspect of alchemy. If you want to learn more, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell button, never miss a video, ask questions below. What's your experience with dual cultivation, if you have any? I know myself and my wife, we've practiced this and had some great experiences. I actually have a video on Kareza right on the channel. Check it out after, because that video specifically will share my experience, but also teach you how to do it. I've written a whole blog with instructions that you can access on my site for free so that you and your wife or your girlfriend can practice together. See you on the next video. God bless.